Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
All right, we are back in full effect for the Detroit is Different podcast in the Detroit is Different podcast studios. Yeah. I got one of the homies that does a lot of work when it comes to entrepreneurship, community work, artistry, and just all around a creative and inspirational person. Many people know him, and he also has a bit of humor in most of what he does as well. Jay, how you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling amazing, big guy. Yeah.
Amazing is a heck of an adjective to use as we are closing out 2019, heading into 2020.
All day.
We usually start all of these discussions with Detroit is Different with your family ties to the city of Detroit. How did your family come about coming to the city of Detroit?
Okay, so that's a really interesting question. So my mom is actually from Honduras. So her people is in Boston. She came here to the Pinehurst, is that Myers area, and was working at the Northwest Activity Center, where a gentleman, my dad, was working and supervising, right?
Ain't that something?
Yeah, you know, nice shapely lady from out of town. And he from Mack and Bewick area, right?
And he came in with that juice.
You know it, baby.
What's
you
up?
hear me?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then his people were like from the South. So,
where at in the South?
Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah, Alabama. Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of the it. You know, I'm from Mack and Bewick for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when we think about Mack and Bewick, as it's one of those historic cross intersections, cross streets in the city of Detroit, a lot of people say, like, it's going to be on Mack and Bewick. It's going to be on Mack and Bewick. Shout out to my homie Stretch Money and a lot of the homies that come from over there. But when I think him initially. But that neighborhood also has a lot of character when it comes to black entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
A lot of the barbershops, a lot of barbecue places. It's a lot of other things going on. Churches, ice cream parlors, tire places, rim places, tax return places.
Yeah.
It's not as, I guess, characterized as how people make it seem that it's happening at the liquor store. Like that whole neighborhood, you know, Mac Alive, shout out Alberta Tinsley Talabi and some of the work she's done with the different representatives that she's known. But what impression did that have on you as a young kid?
So man, these are some great questions, big guy. So Mack and Bewick for me was truly in the essence of, you know, growing up was that belly of the beast. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, it's going to take a twist to some of the negative sides of things, right? So, you know, at a young age, especially in the 80s, you know, the crack epidemic hit. So, like, we would be walking the alleys, because people walk the alleys a lot more than they walk, like, the streets. You know, taking rocks, throwing rocks, man, you know, dribbling the ball, trying to learn how to, you know, flip your skateboard and all this other stuff. And, you know, it would be nothing for us to go to the trash and it'd be like a dead body in the trash. You know what I'm saying? You know, we'd be playing basketball and, you know, we'd be doing our thing. Shots would go off, right? And, you know, when shots go off, you know, we'd kind of leave for a second. And literally like 2 to 3 minutes later, we arguing about the points. Man, I had 5 points, you know. So the score was this, the score was that. So, you know, coming up in that, man, like, it gives people like a different type of grit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that it's, you know, it's painfully obvious that it's a lot of stress that a young person kind of goes through coming up in those type of environments. You know, I don't think nobody should be stepping over no dead body or just like seeing people shoot and all that other stuff, just in that area. But it was also, like a family-oriented place as well, too. So, you had a lot of people that was really looking out for each other, So, I mean, I love my city, man. I love the hood, in a big way,
And that's one of the unique things I think about a neighborhood like that, the layers and the complexities, that it's not as linear as sometimes, I guess, television portrays things.
Yeah.
As if, a dope dealer isn't not necessarily related to possibly the preacher, isn't necessarily related to the person that runs the tax business.
Right.
That's going to give the loan to the lady that needs to keep her lights on.
Absolutely.
Like, it's more layers to a lot of these stories than sometimes television has portrayed it.
Absolutely.
And that's definitely one of those communities, because you also think of the manufacturing that's a stone's throw from that same neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
And you also think of, the I guess I would say like the Detroit River, like one of the biggest assets, isn't even that far from there either. One of the world's greatest assets, actually, right now. And all of this exists in that same neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And I want to say, you mentioned Nipsey downstairs, and he was even talking about it. Like, we grew up, a couple miles away from the beach, but people didn't even necessarily go to the beach in my neighborhood.
Right.
When we think of the thoroughfare and the asset that water is right now.
Oh, yeah.
And the Detroit River and touching it and the processing plant that's like all right there.
Yeah.
In that neighborhood, basically, like when you think of the scope of it, like a couple miles away, it still seems like so many worlds away for a lot of people in those homes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but you already know the hood has been, really hit with a lot of psychological warfare. I mean, the Stop Snitching campaign. I think that was a very intelligent campaign to keep crime on the inside. You know what I'm saying? So, these imaginary lines where people don't necessarily, go beyond these borders, I get it. You know what I'm saying? I really get it.
So as that goes on, mom and dad, Honduran, and that definitely brings like a whole different feel.
Right.
And then from Boston too, one of the cities that welcomes a different like Latin and Caribbean flavor.
For sure.
Versus a city like Detroit.
Yeah.
How did your mom adjust to the lifestyle here?
So that's a really interesting conversation because of my mom is actually bipolar, right? So when you say adjusting, she was coming from, I guess, a sense of pain to a degree, and leaving, and then coming here. One of the things that she was concerned about were her boys, because she had I got two brothers, so she had three boys, has three boys. So one of her concerns was like, education, right? Of course, being a Christian church, and she feels that, we were too street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but as far as her transition, she didn't really talk much about that. And, she's a very powerful, very intelligent lady, but a simple lady. So she has a different working dynamic, just in general in our family. So one of the things that I recently learned, because I just came back from Boston, so this was my first time as an adult going to Boston and, spending some time with my uncle, my uncles, and my little cousins, right? So what I did notice is, so Boston is considered to be like the New England, right?
Yeah.
That's what they call it. So they operate from what appears to be a hierarchy, right? So it appears as though my family there, to a degree, operate from that same hierarchy, right? As it pertains to levels of what's perceived to be success. So people from the South is just a little different. We kind of got this, this loving spirit, this, we all we got type of, ideology. So it seems like to a degree it was not necessarily a clash, but it was an adjustment for me. Just seeing how, quote unquote, the elders kind of, they do they talk. And, kids in one room, adults in one room. And for me, it puts an itch on me to develop and create more opportunities, so it's a seamless transition from a generational divide, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, that's always been a concern. Like I really don't understand why adults choose to ignore young people, especially that way.
Which that definitely parlays me right into you as a young person.
Yeah.
What schools? What was your interest when you were coming up? Because you're very artistic now. Were you always driven in artistry? What was the mind like if I meet you middle school?
Yeah. So if you met me middle school, I was so that Caribbean Latin type of flair. So my mom was always like, I don't know if you ever watched the Spanish channel, man. Like those guys be dressed and they be really colorful. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So my mom would, dress me up and stuff like that. And actually, just had me over in school. And I noticed that, a lot of guys would be a little jealous. A lot of girls would really be attracted. And then, you take a kid, and put them in those circumstances, it's a different working dynamic, right? So in middle school, like I was a funny guy, right? So I was always good, with, making jokes. I was, pretty sharp guy, and then as well as being an athlete, really good that way. I could always draw and stuff like that. And it took my grandfather to share it. He would always say, if you ever want to see any of the kids in the neighborhood, all you have to do is go get Jason and put him on the porch. And that was his way of saying that I was a natural leader. You know what I'm saying? So so for me, it was always, I just always had like a lot of people around. You know what I mean? I always been kind of cool with people and learned how to, I guess, navigate in the hood to a degree.
Yeah, which is a hell of a skill set. And one of the keen things that I've been focusing on more as I recognize the value of social capital, which I believe that we as black people, people of color, but definitely black people here in America, social capital is a hell of an asset that oftentimes, because it's not as easily attainable to people outside of our culture, I think we don't value it to the degree that it's worth. First, and then second, we don't necessarily recognize it as the asset that it can be to create new opportunities.
Right. Yeah. So for me, man, and I love how you shared that. So for me, some of the conversations that I've been in, right, I've been I consider more powerful based conversations. So I think poverty is a conversation, just like wealth is a conversation. But the question that we must ask ourselves is, which conversation are we in? I also believe that the fibers of society, just here in America, period, what is considered good is actually bad, and what's actually bad is considered good in this society. I think a lot of us operate from the Socratic way of doing things, which is we argue to come to what is considered absolute truth. In 1967, we know here in Detroit, the riots happened, right? Well, also in 1967, a gentleman by the name of Eric DeBono, he coined the phrase lateral thinking. And he also developed these 6 thinking hats, right? So for me, taking the opportunity to learn how to be in more power-based conversations, wealth-based conversations, I think that if we practice that, right, we don't exercise those poverty-based conversations where, and we all know the popular narrative when we start talking about racism, some of the systematic approach to the school to prison pipeline. Like, we understand all of the challenges, right?
Well, some of us do, but some of us don't, even with the discussion point of riot or rebellion or uprising or how you want to define that and what characterized that. But a lot of where I believe you're headed is somewhat in the mind of where my philosophy stands too. And at the root of capitalism is based on scarcity. Whereas culturally, I believe our people are people that always look at life as this abundance.
Okay. That's interesting.
So when we see life in abundance, which kind of goes back into social capital, because social capital, you're welcoming in more as opposed to excluding more, you know, like the whole idea to strengthen social capital, you're welcoming in more on an even playing field. But that now is something that you have to have a different energy. The documentary this past spring that a lot of people were tripping off of, like that Black Godfather documentary, and I'm like, that's his social capital, to connect with all of these figures that people recognize as high figures. But it's so many people like that I've run across, and most of the times it's like our people, where it's like, yeah, that dude is you know, he was you know, he played craps with Coleman Young every Friday, but he also was the numbers man back in the day, but he also was the deacon at the church, and he also was friends with the guys from the Nation of Islam. And it's like, okay, one second, this is the same guy? I'm like, yes, because that form of fluid social capital exists. And you're like, well, shouldn't he have more money? And it's like, I don't necessarily know if he's quantifying himself by money, but he doesn't need to ask for anything, because any of the assets or resources that he seeks,
he can leverage those relationships.
To him.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty powerful, man. Just being in those spaces, just being cause in the matter. So I think that's some really powerful stuff, man. Really powerful stuff.
So from there to high school. What was high school? What high school did you go to?
So I went to Edwin Denby Technical and Preparatory High School.
DB. Okay.
Denby. Yep, TARS.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I went there. Graduated with an overall 2.667. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, hey, it'd be like that. So
yeah,
Denby is definitely one of those schools that'll give you some character.
So it was different, man. So again, coming from that Mack and Bewick area, right? So I was supposed to go to Southeastern. I was a barber.
Yeah, I was gonna say
cutting hair. Yeah, 30-30, purple and white. Yeah. So so I was supposed to be in that area, technically, but then I also moved over to Ashland, so I was kind of close to Finney as well, right? So just being in these areas, when I got to Denby to me kind of gave me a feel of almost like the suburbs, kind of, sort of, right? So how we evaluate, I guess, some of the social quality of relationships, when we look for certain grit, or we don't understand to certain degrees why males may be acting different, right? And it took me a while to get it. See, I was raised by my father, right? So it was a lot of, single parent households, right? And, a lot of women were raising young boys. So especially when I got kind of over in that area, I just think that the bonds and how they socialize was just totally different. I felt a lot closer, to people over in that southeastern area, that Charlottesville, Ashland area. And for some odd reason, Denby to me felt more like like they had this elitist type of, idea about themselves. But I really enjoyed it. The year I went there was a gentleman that got stabbed, and he died on the second floor. Those gangs were extremely present. I ended up getting shot the 12th grade year. So crime was pretty high. It's kind of tough. So some of the principles that Jawanza Kunjufu speaks to, like, I was in it. You know what I mean? But I was in it in a different understanding.
And can you give a overview of who he is? I know who he is, but I want you to speak to it.
Yeah, so Jawanza Kunjufu, he wrote a book, The Conspiracy to Destroy Little Black Boys. And he's wrote written several books. But what I'm speaking to is the social dynamic of young people being inside of the schools. So they want to be popular inside of their peer group, which you oftentimes have to defy the adults, right? But you also want the adults in your life to be proud of you. So those two circles, you want to have an even blend of both, right? Because you don't want to be too weird to your friends, and you still want to be respected by the adults, right? So, that was a study in itself, just looking at school as a social institution as well as an educational institution. So I just thought, man, that was really something different.
So during this time, you also started your journey, you said, as a barber.
No, so I was cutting hair at about 12 years old, so I was still kind of like in middle school. Yeah.
Okay, so you began cutting hair at 12.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And did that become a revenue stream for you immediately?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so even that, having your own money, as they say, especially at the age of 12, that's
So I was making money before that, right? So my so my family, that entrepreneur spirit is definitely there, right? So my dad used to we used to do rubs as kids. So man, you talking about 6 and 7, man, and he'd get up on the roof, and he'll look down at us and say, "Hey, I need you, one of y'all to come bring me that hammer." And of course, the property owners looking shocked. They like, "Man, what is going on? Why did?" Man,
why is
we
that ladder?
Right, going up this ladder, man, for insurance purposes and all this, man. They freaking out.
You got that right.
Right, so we going up, but also too, my dad was trained by Tony Robbins, right? So he walked. We seen my father walk through hot coals as a child. So if you can just look at some of the psychological imprint that's making on his children, man, like. So for me, we're actually talking about some of the layers, right? That a lot of times people don't get to see or even note, about me. They kind of see some of the impact in some of the work that we do. But yeah, man. So that's kind of, a blast from the past, and then high school too, right? So I answered it, right?
And then in your barber work, where were you at? You were just like in your basement?
What for sure, doing? Man. The basement where it all started, champ. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we was I cut hair on Ashland, right? So man, I could remember it like it was yesterday. So we got a house full of guys, man, just like sitting on the couch. My dad, he worked for DOT, right? So, he got this green uniform on, man, that piss yellow shirt, champ, right? And, he's coming in, looking like military grade stuff. You know how they used to have those hats and stuff.
Did he drive? Did he drive the bus?
Yeah, he used to drive the bus for the DOT.
Which routes did you drive?
Man, he was everywhere, champ.
Shoemaker. Had some hell on deck.
Oh, yeah, man, but it's cool. It's cool. Man, it's cool, man, because if you did, he did leave you out there, too. You hear me? He did leave you out there. So he coming in the house, man, and all these guys sitting in there, and I'm in the bathroom cutting hair on the toilet, and as I'm cutting hair on the toilet, he's coming in. Of course, when you coming in, man, you got to pee, right? Yeah. So he gets tired of coming in, and asking to use his own bathroom. So he literally just come in, he see everybody in, and he started unzipping his pants, man, and all. Man, everybody shot out of there. You know what I'm saying?
That right. That's in today's world.
Yeah, something different.
That would have got you a bad. What's that? What's that review? What do they call that website where people review stuff?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Online. Damn.
Yeah, so I know what you're talking about, but I'm professionally not knowing what you're talking about. That's how I'm doing that. You see how I did that? I'm from that way, boy. Yeah. So he would then have these conversations with me like, look, you can't be cutting hair, man. You know what I'm saying? You cannot be cutting hair in this house. I'm tired of coming into this house and you got all these people in it, this, blah, blah. I was like, well, all right, cool. I won't. So my clientele and people's like, hey, man, what's up, man? You got to cut. You this, blah, blah. I was like, my old dude said I can't cut you inside the house. Mm-hmm. He was like, well, what's up, man? Can you cut on the back porch? So it's snowing, champ. You know what I'm saying? It's snowing. Man, do you know I got an extension cord outside in the snow? I got gloves on. And they sitting there and they getting their hair cut, champ. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So my dad came home and
right,
and once he noticed like I wasn't gonna be stopped, he was like, man, there was nothing I can do. You know what I'm saying? So like, from that point forward, man, I just started, really doing my thing, man. So, back then, man, I was making like, 150 a week, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is some pretty good money, to be young.
Lot. Yeah, that's great money.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, to be young.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, so that's kind of, how that happened there.
And you kept at it through
Absolutely.
high school.
Yep, through high school. Yep, so I had the opportunity to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. I really don't appreciate the collegiate way of thinking, man.
What's your opinion or what's your perspective?
So
on
this
that?
is it. Is to me, it's a domestic dog and it's a wolf. They get into a battle, right? Mm-hmm. The domestic dog at some point will feel like, oh my God, I might not win this fight. And I believe that's when the wolf will take control. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I look at that. It's something about when you are trained that, especially to fit inside of a system, sometimes you don't get to see the inner workings of it, and you do not get to apply some free thinking into the perspective and able to build and develop things outside of your emotional comfort, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've noticed when people feel inadequate, they go back to school, right? Then they get another degree. So to me, it's just it's a different approach, right? And the whole education, even when we start to look at science, man, they are teaching people things that have already been proven. That's like 80% of the actual course itself. So why are we constantly repeating things that's already been proven? Wouldn't we be losing the true essence of, being creative and learning new and really testing and pushing the envelope? You know what I'm saying? So I believe as a people, we kind of lost, man, in that sense.
And I follow and give some credence to that argument. I would come back with the challenge of that argument.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
As a college grad and and now in grad school and everything, which I do believe that the premise of college is built to, it's a lot of training and conditioning that is going on,
right?
And then sometimes the premise is like, can you sit through this system for 4 to 5 years or whatever,
right,
and assimilate to this system enough where now we can trust you in our system, right, of whatever that may be, for employment or for contracting or for this loan for this car or whatever. Like, have you shown enough of enough discipline to submit what you would consider your free will to be into this?
There we go.
Also, do you think that a lot of my question for you would be, do you think that many people possess the skill set to independently challenge themselves to ascertain knowledge of self and knowledge of the world and wisdom?
Absolutely.
You think so?
Positive. I mean, people do it all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think, and I know you've heard the quote, people need to be told what to do.
Sometimes, I've definitely heard that. Yeah.
So to me, that comes from that assembly line of education. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So let's look at it from the athletic lens. Mm-hmm. You get a ball. You know what I'm saying? You learn how to dribble. You do your thing, right? Like, people not really teaching you, like, how to really get it in. You know what I'm saying? People, they out there, they doing it. They practicing, they doing stuff. They doing it, man. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at it through the lens of education, I believe, tries to sit people down and minimize their gifts, right? And it creates a longer period for you to then be considered educated, right?
Yes. And the only, I guess, the rebuttal in my mind would be like I say, I don't know how many people actually possess that will and initiative and determination to do that, to acquire that knowledge themselves, to look at it and build a principle base themselves. That's one thing. And then the other thing would be,
our moral fiber is strong, no champ.
but you've already.
I'm saying
displayed
our.
certain
I'm saying our.
quality. Oh, okay.
I'm saying our period. Our moral fibers is tight. You understand what I'm saying? So for us to have strong moral fibers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then not be able to possess those opportunities just to be great. You know what I mean? And to quote unquote need their education to sustain ourselves, or have a natural desire to be better. You know what I'm saying? So I think education kind of, I really think it files people out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I can follow some of where
it's a
you
numbing
come from
process, champ. You know what I'm
I
saying?
think for some it can be that, but I also, it's an asset. It can be very like everything in life. It can be a liability and it can be an asset. It all depends on what your mind state is. But I do think that there are many people, especially in America, that are looking for purpose. And seeking purpose from being told what to do, from a form of conditioning that even goes back to beyond before they were even in a preschool. You know, that goes into like the systems that we believe, like having free thought and having independence. Also, kind of it's a incubation state. I think that almost begins in a household itself. If you've never seen it done, if you've never met a Jay or myself, if you've never seen a creative say to themselves like, okay, I don't even necessarily know what you do, but what are you doing and how are you doing this? And it's like, okay, this is how I'm gonna do it, and this is how I'm gonna plan it, and these are the resources I need, and bam. Right. If you've never touched something like that, it can be difficult. Yeah.
But difficult is a poverty-based conversation, and I'm with it. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, because difficult is also based on perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people can walk in and be like, oh, man, it's easy. Boom. You know what I'm saying?
True. Yeah. So with that, you also have a lot of different forms of philosophy, a lot of different connections to knowledge from reading, conversations, documentaries, self-discovery yourself.
Yeah, podcasts like this.
What's kept you so in tune to seek the knowledge that you sought, and where did that journey begin to build your base of your knowledge center?
Well, so I came here like this. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's nothing that
was a catalyst per se.
Not necessarily. If anything, it was just being honed, by my family, man. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like having a grandmother and a great grandmother, a father, my uncle, and my mom, like really in my life that way, and people really, giving me a chance. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's like us, right? Mm-hmm. So we having some open dialogue with each other, right? And today you created an opportunity to give me a chance to come out and speak, right?
Yes, sir.
So in that regard, I think a lot of times people don't give people chances and opportunities, and we tend to miss out on some greatness that can actually happen. So it was times where my uncle could have been hanging out, but he was like, no, I'm about to kick it with my nephew. And not just regular kick it, like big kick it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So inside of a space where, he would teach me things like, Jay, you come in here, man, you act like you're listening, man, but you're not listening. I asked you to do something and you're not. He was like, Jay, how old are you, man? And I was like, I'm 12. And he's like, okay. Well, man, I'm 50. Right? He was like, Jay, if a 4-year-old came in here and was trying to run some game, would you be able to see it? I was like, yeah. Like if you heard him say that in the other room that their parent told him that they couldn't have no candy. Then they walked in here into the kitchen, looked at you and smiled and said, "Can I have some candy?" But you just heard them in the other room, right? I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "So how would you feel about that?" I was like, "Well, I feel like they're trying to run game." He was like, "Well, so you can see that to a 4-year-old at 12. I'm 50, so I can see when you do that to me." So it created an aha moment for me. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So when I say big kick it, like we having these type of conversations, you know what I'm saying? So for me, that's powerful. In a different perspective from a different type of uncle or father that just come in like, "Hey man, go grab me a beer. Yeah, we about to go watch the game," and just sit back and they smoking and they just kind of kicking it and they talking about women. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a different type of depth there, you know. So
yeah,
you know, so when you talk about, you know, the philosophy and stuff like that, I kind of came here this way, and then people just, you know, they really just took time to kind of work with me. You included in that, you know what I'm saying? You did some amazing work, you know, back in the day, by even recognizing, acknowledging, and we close in age too, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes that's a little different, man, to have someone close in age and to be able to work well with one another without a lot of that egotistical stuff, you know, being present.
And I would say, just due to the root of where my philosophy stands, goes back to that word of scarcity.
Yeah.
A lot of that ego comes to scarcity.
Yeah.
Because the thought process is, if I'm on a stage with Jay,
yeah,
really it's only one, you know, as the that phrase is very capitalistic. It's lonely at the top. Or
yeah,
it's
okay,
only room
yeah.
for one.
Yeah.
In reality, I subscribe to abundance.
Right, me too, John. Yeah.
It's enough apples on the tree for everybody.
Yeah, it's many trees too. You know what I'm
That too.
yeah.
It's many trees, many hills.
Yeah.
Everything is abundant.
Yeah.
In Africa, things are abundant.
Yeah.
And that's the land, that's the cradle of civilization.
Yeah,
so I need to think from that perspective, not from the idea as if like it's not. So I can see and understand, I think, when people think like that, you know, from my perspective. But yeah, man, you've put in a lot of work, and you're speaking about when we recognized you at a Kwanzaa ceremony.
Absolutely, man.
And that
really
was
humbling
cool.
moment, man.
It was me,
really humbling moment.
And Youssef.
Yeah.
That was a great event. That
Man,
was the last
powerful,
event at the Renaissance Club in the Renaissance Center. Right
Powerful.
now, it's reopened as something else. I just saw something in Cranes, Detroit.
Powerful,
about
man.
that.
Yeah.
It's like a new restaurant or something, but real cool place. I don't know if people have ever been to the Renaissance Club, but that's some of that work that when I felt like, yeah, man, I'm out here and I'm chopping down trees, and now I have so much more perspective than then. Though I love that energy I had then. Yeah,
man, and what it did for me, and what it did for my wife and the community, and just, you know, as peers, man, it was really powerful, man. Like, it goes beyond measure, man. Like,
thank you.
Like sometimes, like people just don't know, like, when you are just aware, man. And just acknowledge in that sense, and not just from like an award, but like a deeply, you know, committed and just deeply rooted, like, this is Detroit. You know what I'm saying? So like, man, it just does a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and now that kind of moves us right into the talk of the work. The reason I recognized you.
Okay,
it's funny because we used to. We still go back and forth about philosophy, but I remember we had like a pretty long debate at I remember at the Charles H. Wright Museum.
Okay.
And this is when you were really working heavy with the Better Detroit Youth Movement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily agree with all with the approach, but I agree with the intentionality.
Man, what was the approach? What was the approach?
Time,
yeah, this is getting good.
At the time, I don't remember all of the debate, but I know it's like, okay, I think it may be an easier way or a better way of doing it. But in reality, it's like I had to concede because it's like he putting in the work. He's galvanizing the people, and he's right in front of the people, speaking up on behalf of how artistry needs to be a part. Artistry and culture needs to be a part of young people, and it can be.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people that were not necessarily taking that initiative like you were.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I think it may be a better approach. I mean, this is like years ago Detroit. This is Mayor Kilpatrick Detroit.
Yeah, so, for sure, yeah.
So my thought process is like, yeah, maybe you can work with the city and and approach it differently. But your approach was like, nah, we can do it with young people actually being involved in the process a whole lot more, because if the resources to go to them, then they need to be intricately involved
for sure
in the delivery of whatever that resource is.
Yep, ding dong telephone.
So
yeah.
And from that, I'm like, yo, he real intentional. He's
For
driven
sure.
in that.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
And
What's
then like
been
later
time with
on, I went to that great event you did at, man, I don't even know what that is. Like the art center there off Grand River.
Yeah, the Living Peace Art Party.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, we learn when you color outside the lines, you truly redefine the shape, champ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
So Better Detroit Youth Movement and that work, how did you get into this, like now I guess it's labeled as like cultural placemaking for young people or whatever, but
That's dope. I love how we grow because these industry buzzwords we can pop up.
Yeah. I mean, you was doing something. To me, it was like you was looking out for little homies you knew, but I guess now it's cultural placemaking for young people. You know what I'm saying?
That's so dope. That feels so good to hear it that way. I feel professional, right?
But how did you go from, okay, barber with some philosophy and some game about himself to like, okay, let's create some lanes for some of the folks.
Simple, champ. So I started in my family. I'm a really committed guy when it comes to family. Again, people took that time out for me. They gave me that chance and choice, right? So in that regard, I started to work on our family, right? And I noticed, like, when we was putting the work in with my family, like, some of my family members was kind of tripping. You know what I'm saying? We was really taking a big lead. So they was like, we would do different events and stuff like that. And they like, yeah, I don't know if I want to put my money in to go do some of this stuff. And, well, how much does that cost? So it was just a lot of that kind of taking place inside my family. Mm-hmm. So I had already had the shop. So I was like, well, let me kind of step away because it seemed like it's creating a little bit of friction inside the family just to kind of work with them that way, right? Because I was real big. One of my little cousins know each other. So as time progressed, we kind of dissolved that because everybody felt like they needed to get their money back and move forward in the path that they chose. And in doing so
it was like a family business venture.
No, it was just us spending time with family.
Yeah.
And being very intentional on making that happen.
I got you.
Pooling money together, having meetings, those types of things.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So in doing that, I noticed there was some friction there. Yeah. So then I developed a promotional team for the salon. As a result of developing the promotional team in one of the meetings, I said I want to talk about everything but hair. Right?
Yeah.
And they was like, all right, cool. So we would, go out, we would do all these different events, speaking at schools, just kind of kicking it with people, trying to allow them to understand what's what. Got invited to go speak at a Boysville, and it just kind of changed. We brought Stretch out and a few others, and in doing so, I noticed that we unlocked a lot of locked up, like, tension in people. It was like we was giving them some different perspectives, and it seemed like they realized that they had a chance and a choice. You know what I mean? And I remember it like it was yesterday. One of the guys, he ended up writing us, and he told me, and it was a little disheartening, because at the time, I'm in Cartier glasses and big pinky ring and Rolex on and all this stuff. I'm still a young guy though. You know what I'm saying? And they was like, I know you listen to him talk and all that other stuff, but he ain't gonna do nothing but go back to the community and sell drugs. You know what I'm saying? And it just kind of hurt a little bit to kind of see the same people that asked you to come speak to kind of say something like that. You know what I'm saying? To a person that's already incarcerated or in a program. Yeah. So from that perspective, we kind of quickly moved forward. And we put together the Living Peace Art Party, May 31st, 2008. We noticed that it's a lot of egotistical and territorial issues that typically keep us apart, right? And what better way to bring the community together than art? It fuses class, race, religion, all at the same time. You know what I mean? So it almost brings, if not, I guess the race part, some of the same working dynamics of the barbershop. It kind of brings people together. So we did the Live in Peace Art Party, and we said if you don't live in peace, we guarantee you will rest in peace, highlighting all different genres of art. So we had the art of going to school, the art of artist life. So we had body painters come out, break dancers, I mean, a whole
Poets,
gambit.
rappers,
Everything, man.
Musicians,
Yep.
visual artists.
Yeah, visual artists. We had a gentleman there that made video
artists,
games, just all type of stuff. Our
culinary
artist
artists.
Yeah, we had a pregnant woman come out when her stomach was body painted, and we just said, we guarantee if you don't live in peace, you will rest in peace. So that was kind of like the birth of the Better Detroit Youth Movement. To date, we have a very extensive body of work. We've had young people to write into the Charter Commission by way of Reggie Ware Davis. We have had mayoral debates where we actually had our young person, Angela Kilgore. That was a Denby student that actually put the mayoral debate over at Denby, and Duggan, when running, had to come out, right? Mm-hmm. So we've done that. We've had stomping out HIV events. We've given out roughly like $150 million in scholarships. We've saved robotics programs, softball teams. We've had contracts with the juvenile justice system. We're at the table working on policies and in a host of different capacities. And the dialogue is simple, man. Our youth, mm-hmm. and being able to activate our youth consistently. So, that's pretty much where I'm at.
And you've also shared this with your better half, mm-hmm. and I've known her since high school when I started at King.
Yeah.
With Ray, always intelligent, always fly, beautiful, and very, very, I would say, she has to actualize something for her to like invest in it. But so I can only imagine what that's like growing this project with her.
Yeah, so actually the whole Better Detroit Youth Movement is her idea. Mm-hmm. So one day she just was sitting up with me and was like, when I get done with school, I want to, have a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I was like, that's what's up. I said, but one day is like an island. Brian Tracy taught me that. One day I'll do this, one day I'll do that, right? That day never comes. I was like, so what's wrong with working on it now? Like, why you got to wait till you get older to then establish something? So the Better Detroit Youth Movement, the Better Baltimore Youth Movement, the Better Brooklyn Youth Movement, a lot of it came from a simple conversation.
So that bond and sharing that, mm-hmm. as you're sharing in business, organization, community efforts, mm-hmm. In many different opportunities and relationships, what's that like as you grew that bond with Ray? Because that bond started even before the marriage of today. But yeah, what was that like, and what's that growing together? So
when we take a look at the bond, sometimes when you end it, man, you just end it. You're not necessarily aware of the impacts that's actually taking place, right? You know what I'm saying? That's just like us here having this opportunity to communicate about this podcast. We don't quite know the bond that's actually being developed right now. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it's no way for me to actually qualify that statement. You understand where I'm coming from? Mm-hmm. Love is very present. You know what I mean? So in that regard, I think that, when you and someone else that you committed to are working together for something that's bigger than both of y'all, I think that's powerful, man. I think that's some visionary stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's the old saying, plant a tree that you never even want to sit in the shade under. You know what I'm saying? You actually planting it for somebody else. So, I just think that, man, it's power in that. So where are we growing to now? That's something that we don't really know. You know what I'm saying? Because life happens. Our perspective is just so small, I think. Because a lot of it is based on our past experiences and stuff like that, and our insecurities. So again, that Socratic way, I think, is just so present, man. Like, people tend to look at some of the negative things to suggest, oh, those are the bonds that kept us together. You see what I'm saying? And again, I don't think it's a way to actually qualify what that bond would look like. You know what I'm saying?
And all the while this is where we're in kindred spirit too. Even you to jump on me, because you also have had your barbershop running as the community efforts are running as
Oh
well.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like
and in real estate too.
yeah,
and
like,
doing acting and modeling. That junk crazy, child.
so the amount of time just knowing how to budget your time.
Mm-hmm.
What's your practice in reference to that?
So my practice is, man, a lot of people waste it, right? A lot of people waste it. When you learn how to be more effective and efficient, remember the Eric DeBono lateral thinking process, is ways to get in spaces and, get more out of a space than someone that is just there, so to speak.
Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yep, will do.
To the J definition of that, because it's your interpretation of what lateral thinking is and how you've applied it, your application. So can you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So sometimes I would be in a space, and in that space, one would perceive me to be a voice in the community.
Mm-hmm.
While in that space, I would quickly notice opportunities, and I could hear deficiencies, and I would operate in a host of different capacities, right? So I would ultimately be a change agent in that atmosphere, right? Instead of they want the community to be present and just go in and just be present and listen and learn, I would actually actively engage. I would question. I would mobilize. I would insert opportunities. And in doing so, if that took 15 minutes, right, inside of that 15 minutes, I would also let a person know that I was a barber. I would let people know that I was in the real estate. So that 1 15-minute interaction was able to multiply my efforts tremendously. So an average individual would probably go in like, yeah, I'm only here for the community side. They don't know how to, flip inside of the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So does that kind of make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
and I like that you expounded upon that, because people often ask me, what do you do and how do you do it? And my response is, it's like, how much time do we have to give you the answer? But generally, depending upon where I'm at, those opportunities and those windows present themselves. And being present for those windows. Because actually, like right before this, it was so funny. Like years ago, I met this guy, and we cool. He's a writer for the Harvard Business Review, and one of his friends is coming here from Austria, and he's like, yo, show him some different stuff in Detroit. And it's like, yeah, I'll show him. And he's a writer as well. So it's like those opportunities, and then I'm sure I'm going to show him this content things, but that's the seed in the ground that later on down the line, he'll be like, hey, this other guy from Japan's coming. And,
Right.
And then you don't even know it. And it's like, how you got a homie from Japan? And it's well, 10 years ago.
Right.
In the crowd.
Right. Yeah.
I met this guy that just was, we were talking about the Tigers, and he's a Boston fan.
Yeah.
That's what sparked our discussion.
Yeah.
And that willingness too.
Yeah.
For the person that is shy, a little bit more introverted.
Yeah.
What tips do you think they should?
So here we go. I love it, man. I love it. So for me, what is in will come out, right? Mm-hmm. Your internal dialogue causes your perception and your reality to me, right? I must have fed you some food that you like, right?
I like what you're saying.
Yep. So again, earlier I said being cause in the matter, right? You are the cause of it. You are able to create. You are the creator of it, right? So for a person to internalize, a lot of times you can say nothing and still create in a very powerful way. A very powerful way. Very powerful way.
You got an example?
So it's gonna sound all space agey. if I was to share, it would feed the intellectual mind.
Okay.
Right? Most people cannot wrap their minds around that process because it's worlds apart from what is considered the standard way of looking at things. And it's a blend between the spiritual world and just the simple choice that we have. You know, every time we open our mouth, we got opportunity to build or destroy. Well, before the mouth even gets open, it's thoughts. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And you can either share your woe or your wisdom. And what you see depends mainly on what you look at, right? So when we start to, look at it from an introspective perspective, that sounds weird. I believe that we can really cause a lot, especially operating from a space of joy. Man, you can just cause so much, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deep, very deep. And I follow a lot of what you're saying. I hope that other people can interpret it. And my understanding is a lot of where we hold our energy. As I feel the whole concept of The Secret or the law of attraction. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of merit in the law of attraction. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it's as simple as saying, I want $1 million, let it manifest. Mm-hmm. As much as it will, depending upon your approach, it will change your attitude, your behavior, mm-hmm. your intentionality around the other actions that you're making, which will lead you to that path of whatever that you're seeking to attract. But if you're seeking to attract something that you've already, a lot of it is that the mental playground, your willingness to accept it and also break down the incentive of why it's something that you want to attract in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Which can be some,
Yeah, that can be really
stuff.
deep,
Yeah, it can be some stuff up there.
It's like the man that wants a brand, the red Corvette. It's like you want the red Corvette because, or here we go. Yeah, the Rolex and the Yays, like my friends. Mm-hmm. I have friends that have the Rolexes and the Cartier glasses, mm-hmm. but they're doing that to attract attention from a woman. Mm-hmm. And then you put on the Cartier glasses and you put on the Rolex and don't get the attention that you thought that it would attract. And now you have to reevaluate your value system because really the intentionality never was the glasses or the Rolex in the first place.
Right, it was the girl.
So now you mad at her because it didn't emote the what you thought from her from the material possessions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
These people don't, or the person with the degree. Man, I got a PhD and these people don't even care. And it's like, well, was the PhD a personal fulfillment thing, or was it to walk in a room and say, "Hey, I got a PhD from Harvard," and everybody clap her and everything? So like, what's the intentionality behind the action in the first place? Yeah. And if that's balanced mm-hmm. and actualized, mm-hmm. then sometimes you may run into what you're seeking to attract even before you perceived you would get there. Mm-hmm. Or attach yourself to something sooner that is more fulfilling, mm-hmm. So that's deep, which kind of goes into, I guess, books or documentaries. What's in your scope building this philosophy? Let's go documentaries, because nowadays a lot of people
you say documentaries. I don't know, champ, because like I just listened to a podcast today.
Okay.
So when you say documentaries, man, it's like 1,000 of them. So I do a thing called the Hour of Power, and I just learned something new, champ. You know what I'm saying? So so it's no specific documentary. Okay. It is a book. Okay. That I've been kind of talking about lately. By Michael A. Singer, The Untethered Soul.
What's the book exploring?
That internal dialogue. I mean, since we having that conversation. Yeah.
Tethered. That's what made me think about us.
Yeah, the untethered soul.
Speaking of, what was your take on Us? As you,
Man, you about to do that to me?
Yes,
yeah. So the movie Us, man, I thought it was dope. I thought it was dope because it spoke to a working narrative that I believe is in support of how the world is trying to shift to a degree. I think that they want to move people away from the good is bad thing. I think they want people to be in a more quote unquote meditative state. And in that meditative state, some of the suppression tactics that they've been using would be able to go deeper, right? So in that regard, I think that was represented well with everyone holding hands in the movie Us. I also think that the bunnies that the people were eating underground was a very intricate way to suggest. So the bunny is the fastest reproducing mammal.
True.
That's why,
At it like rabbits.
Yep. That's why Hugh Hefner used the Playboy bunny. The population control, they were eating the rabbits for the people that were in quote unquote their lower self, right? I believe the people underneath lost their voice. So I think in that meditative state, you have an opportunity to quote unquote gain your voice, right? So what I'm sharing is a polarity from, to me, society, and how this movie kind of winked at some of this stuff.
Yes.
And the black family was the strongest family because they were able to kill their old selves off, and the white family was not able to.
Yeah.
So to me, from a population standpoint, it speaks to, us culturally. It seems like, seems like we are evolving a different way. And again, I could, talk on it for a lot longer, but yeah.
I'm liking this take because I definitely I love movies. That movie had me for the loop. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And that is a take that I have not heard. And I think that is healthy to get that perspective. And I'm going to go back when I watch it again, just even from this discussion, and tie some of that thought process together. As I did see some of my interpretation was like the lower self, like the id, the subconscious, that whole concept. And it was just more so like
even the
I
mirroring.
was so actualized in the, or like I was looking at so much of the reality of like, okay, that's not even that far underground, but I need to look at it way more in the form of an analogy than in the form of, can this happen?
The old subways, like it was some amazing stuff in there, man. In the mirroring process, you are against you. So if you raise your arm, if you move, and that's that internal component, you believe that you are in a space of resistance.
Yes.
Because, you are using your eyes and your ears and your smell out here, but you really causing a lot internally. You know what I'm saying?
Because the mind is actually the functioning, I guess, like the most functioning muscle that the brain
and that's funny because so the mind and the brain they
two totally different things,
right?
But the mind is at the root of our existence itself, even how we see ourselves. That's deep. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna definitely be watching that. That kind of has me throw the next question your way, and I know we're getting to an end, but I gotta ask this question.
Yeah.
So because we're at a, I guess all times are very pivotal, quote unquote. But,
it is, man.
Right now, especially growing up with the mother that diagnosed bipolar.
Yes.
Which I'm one to think that depending upon what triggers and what traumas and all forms of bipolarity can be it can shift.
Yeah.
The new quote unquote, I guess, campaign recognizing the awareness.
You about to do this
of mental health, especially in the Black community.
So really, you gonna do this to me? You gonna make me do this with you?
I have to ask this.
So
question.
I love you to death. Love you to life. So come on. What's
your take on?
I'm gonna tell you, champ.
I'm the older I'm getting, I'm recognizing more of these things that definitely where I recognize some of those triggers. Like I necessarily don't know what resources I have to counsel or usher a person through.
Yeah.
But I'm recognizing it more. I think it probably has always existed, but more so in the industrial age, the way information traveled. I don't think things were as exposed or they just were looked at differently. But can you please share your take on like this movement right now around the awareness of Black mental health and what's happening, why it's happening,
Okay, here we go. This is so good. Oh my God. So to me, right, I don't know if you remember the whole campaign about homosexuality in the Black community. The phrase was called Down Low Brothers. You remember that?
I remember that Oprah episode as most Black men watched it, and we were like, okay, I don't think that this is as much of a phenomenon as this guy's saying. That was my take,
Right.
But
so to me, the bonds of the way we were operating in, I mean, we were starting to buy property. People was getting out of those old 85 Cutlasses and they was actually buying brand new cars. People were standing up in the community. And it was starting to grow rapidly. And out of the blue, this whole Down Low Brother thing come up.
Yeah.
Which is a social attack, again, to get women to not trust males. Right? I believe this whole Black mental illness stuff is the equivalent if I beat you for years on out and for years on out, and I tell you different things on why I beat you, and then I no longer beat you, but I psychologically explain to you, you have been beaten. And I think you need to self-check yourself on the things that you've been doing. So to me, African Americans or Black or how you identify, the LGBTQ movement was directly tied to civil rights.
True.
Right? And as we were fighting for our rights, they also were fighting for rights. And where our color is clear, the sex or relation to is not. Right? You can't see a homosexual. You just can't see these things, right? Okay. So I think that kind of quote unquote, looking at it from the lens of from an African American, we are fighting for our rights standpoint, it muddied the waters. So it was able to pull people away from that original fight, right? So after the LGBTQ component, I believe now they're ushering in this new focal point, especially for Blacks, which is a direct result to me from, of course, Black folks got post-traumatic stress syndrome. You driving it, the police come, even if you straight, you concerned, right? So I think that they're just mixing this mental illness component into something to start a working narrative before you can even talk about race. You're mentally, you guys just aren't, you guys need to self-evaluate.
Dismissive.
Yeah, self-evaluate.
So
you need
like
to self-evaluate.
Like a
dismissive
way of
psychological approach.
Like to unqualify whatever you would say, because it's like you crazy anyway because you black.
Mm-hmm. It's just, I think it just broadens the net. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it puts because I just don't see the Asian community pushing something like this. I mean, have you?
I haven't seen any community. I think that I recognize that. I think that I think it always has existed in our own ways, but American society itself, mental illness, I've just never really seen America care that much about anything other than making money. So my thought process is like, what's the incentive behind it? So that's why I was asking your perspective. But I don't see the Asian community. I don't see any other community galvanized around this concept. The only other community I've ever seen around this idea were, and it's funny, it's like as I think about the way that they're treated, were veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about the lack of respect that some of the veterans, especially that have served,
right,
it may align itself with the concept of, well, they crazy in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they get to create a narrative where you have to, self-evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, if the game is to run at full pace and get to the end goal, if you are in the race and you are second guessing yourself, you probably wouldn't run as fast.
Very true.
You know what I'm saying?
Very true.
So if I can get you to stagnate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I don't have to be bothered with you because you're in a conversation with yourself at this point. Because now you're questioning your impact. Mm-hmm. And the more you can question your impact, the less there is.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's deep.
To me, anyway. Yeah.
That's deep. So with that, I'm going to definitely have to get you back. I'm gonna close out with the classic Detroit is different questions. And this is completely a different loop.
Sweet. I love loops.
Your very first car.
A Regal. Was it a Regal?
Year, make, and model.
Yeah, Regal, Buick Regal. 86.
What year did you get it?
You gonna do this to me right now? What year did I get it? 93 maybe? 93, 94
you
maybe?
You win it.
No, it didn't work. It didn't work. So the only thing I could do was get a battery set in there.
86
Yeah, put the key in it. Put the key in it. No, flats, champ. I mean, it didn't work, champ. Engine blown. And listen to music. They be like, Jay, what did you do? I was in the car, man, just listening to music. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, hey, you got some good pictures out of it.
No, because so this before the cell phones, champ. You got look at you.
You would have had to. Had to take a picture.
We would have had to take
go to CVS.
No, we would have had. I would have had to have somebody with a Polaroid come out, snap that boy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There was no selfies.
Your first, your first ride that was rolling then.
A Dodge, a K car.
Okay,
a K car.
Where did you? Do you remember the first place you went when you got it?
Yeah, probably the gas station, champ. You know how they do. You know how they do. Yeah, man. It's your car, man, but it ain't got no gas in it. So, yeah, that's probably it.
Okay. And then the first place you went outside of the gas station.
So that I can remember, I think I went to, was it a prep? Not a pep rally, but we was having something on Belle Isle.
Okay.
And, I'm sitting there playing my music, And
a whole nother culture back then.
It sure was, champ. So, people in they drop top LeBarons and they getting it in, right? Mm-hmm. And I pull up in this K car and they like, man, he in the K car, busting out laughing, and then at the time,
you was rolling.
For sure, champ. At the time, some of these people was walking, man, they on feet.
Yeah, you was rolling. Yeah. You was rolling.
Absolutely.
You're the DJ at the end of the Detroit fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 3 songs. What songs you playing?
If I Rule the World, that Mary J. Blige and Method Man, You All I Need. Mm-hmm. And it's going to have to be an Outkast song. I'm going to have to do something with my guy, Andre. Yeah, I don't know which one I want to rock with though, but yeah.
Okay. Something from Andre. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, they got just 1,000 of them.
Yeah. A lot of them. A lot of
some off the AT Aliens though, for sure.
Oh, okay. Well, then I was listening to, you know, Millennium may be my favorite song off that. As far as verses, you know. Well, a lot of people don't know that, but, you know, it goes the planet, stars, moons, you know. People know if you know.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. If you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why?
If I could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why? Probably my great grandmother, man.
That's deep.
Yeah, probably my great grandmother, because a woman that was not quote unquote educated but deeply rooted and patient enough to move on after, you know, her husband passed, and, you know, showed her family like she did. So it would be called the Lillian McAllister Street.
I'm with it.
Yeah. Miss Mack, baby.
I'm with it.
That sounds good too, man. Miss Mack instead of Woodward. Yeah.
So with that, how do people get in contact with you? I'm gonna put that down, but you can share.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. So you can definitely get in contact with me through the website, betterdetroityouth.org. You send me an email, hbivens@betterdetroityouth.org. You can pop up on Livernois and 6 Mile at JayFades.com, hair and nail salon. You know, come by, say hello, right? And I can also be reached via phone. You can contact my assistant at 313-460-6638 to schedule some appointments, or you want to talk, you want to create, need some consulting done. Let's get it. And that's it. Bada boom, bada bing. And thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Detroit is different.
Thank you.
And that's for sure. Better know that.
Peace.